The question is that this bill be now read a second time. I call the member for Blacktown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the government's Community Service Sector Portable Long Service Leave Bill 2024 and thank the Minister, Sophie Costas, and her team for introducing this wonderful bill. The nature of long service leave has changed. For the vast majority of the workforce, gone are the days where you could work for one employer for decades. Today, people are anticipated to have at least 5 career changes and probably lots of jobs in between, and will probably work across different industries. Today, we have an increasing casualised workforce. Employers, in the pursuit of profit maximisation, are demanding more from their employees in being on-call workforce, receiving ad hoc hours, or in a casualised environment. This bill adds to portable long service leave for contract cleaners and building construction industries that has previously been approved. This bill now allows community service workers to have access to portable long service leave. Many of these workers suffer from dual flexibility concept. Those who have to work odd hours across the 7-day spread and are also on limited contracts, as funding for programs are generally from 1 to 5 years. Once the contract funding program ends, so does their tenure with the organisation. This bill has been discussed with the sector and many great initiatives, including, firstly, it provides a 12-month gift of service for workers who register in the first 6 months of this program. Secondly, allows up to a 4-year break of service before service credits are at risk of default. And thirdly, eligible workers will benefit from 6.1 weeks of paid leave after 7 years of employment and pro rata after that. This bill commences from proclamation with the intention to begin on the 1st of July 2025, allowing time for employers, workers and the Long Service Leave Corporation to prepare. This bill is a great success for women in a women-dominated sector. I thank the ASU for their strong campaign, and I pick up on the member for Auburn earlier today when she referred to the original Long Service Leave Bill in this place that came in from a male minister in a male-dominated industries to having a female minister for industrial relations and bringing in portable long service leave for a female-dominated industry. And I love history. I love looking back. So I might, if the House wishes to dwell for a couple of moments, that the Madam Speaker, that wish to bring to your attention people who stood at this very dispatch box. What was said on the Long Service Leave Bill when it was first introduced. It was actually first introduced in 1951. The first Long Service Bill was actually introduced into this Parliament and the first of the English-speaking world was here in New South Wales. It was actually seen as novel legislation, as it was experimental. The great Labor Premier James McGurk, who's the grand uncle of the current member for Wagga Wagga, hopefully he'll see the light one day and return to the Labor fold. The McGurk Labor government introduced the industrial amendment to the Industrial Arbitration Act to give all employees working under a state award the right to long service leave. And all they had to do, so it wasn't actually giving them outright light, but what they had to do, that's what was experimental, this legislation, they had to then go to the Industrial Relations Commission or the conciliation committees dealing with their industry for a suitable clause to be inserted into their awards. May I say, that was a very flexible bill. Imagine us introducing bills that says, oh, here you go, you got the right to ask. Obviously, probably the experimental legislation wasn't the best and had to be amended in 1952 and then again in 1954 or 53 before landing on the current 1955 Long Service Leave Bill, which was introduced by Mr Abram Lander, the Labor member for Bondi and the Minister for Labour and Industry, amongst other portfolios. Minister Lander, in his second read speech on the 20th of October 1955, on the long service leave bill, said, "We on this side of the House, and in fact the Labor movement in New South Wales, are very proud to bring the pioneers of this historic piece of legislation for the improvement of conditions of life of the people. Long service leave is a good principle." Whilst concerns were raised at the time by the opposition, they were also very supportive. And the people on the other side, Mr. Ivan Black, MP, the member for Neutral Bay, was leading for the opposition. He said the opposition does not oppose the principle of reasonable long service leave. The principle of today's bill allows flexibility within the community services industry as a person goes from one employer to the other. And if I can quote Mr. Black from the opposition again, he may have actually foreshadowed something 69 years ago when he said, on behalf of the Liberal opposition, long service leave will tend to create a greater desire in both parties, being the employer and the employee, to maintain continuity of association in the industry. He also went on to say that the move from a contract to full-time employment, that the worker will tend to say, here is an opportunity for continuity of association with long service leave to come. This results in a happier industrial relations. So it's actually quite good to see that on both sides of the House, since day one, since 1951 with the exploratory legislation, through to hopefully today, that both sides and all members of the crossbench continue to support the principle of long service leave. And as we see, and particularly in the community sectors industry, we're trying to have retention of workers, attracting workers, and actually being rewarded for their long-term commitment in an industry, in a service that actually enhances and supports people's lives. In closing, Minister Costas, you have today introduced and passed in this House the industrial manslaughter legislation, and now soon to have the long service portability extended to the community sector's worker. You continue the traditions as stated by the Labor Minister Abraham Lander in 1955, that yourself personally, on behalf of all the MPs, Labor MPs and MLCs, and to quote Mr. Lander, continue to pioneer historic pieces of legislation for the improvement of the conditions of the life of the working people, which is the basis of the Labor philosophy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question